Welcome to the deep dive. We are skipping the usual warm-up today, jumping straight into what might be the most, well, ambitious theory of human creativity out there.
We're tackling Arthur Koestler's huge work, The Act of Creation.
Right, and Koestler, he had this single, really powerful core idea.
Yeah, basically that every leap of human originality, whether it's, a big scientific discovery, a moving piece of art, or even just a good joke, it all comes from the very same mental trick.
And our job today is to unpack that central concept he calls bisociation.
Bisociation, that's the key.
It's the thing behind the aha moment in science, isn't it? And the big ha-ha, laugh from humor, and that sort of quiet ah you get from art or beauty.
Exactly. And Koestler lays this all out using what he calls the triptych. 3 panels. The jester for humor, the scientist for discovery, and the artist for art.
3 domains, 1 underlying pattern.
That's the claim. By looking at how all 3 work, he shows the pattern holds. And, we don't need some dry definition for bisociation. A joke works much better.
Okay, let's hear it. Koestler uses that classic one about the Marquis, the newly married one.
Right. So someone asks the Marquis if his new wife is virtuous.
And the Marquis, he just deadpans. Sir, that is a matter of division of labor.
Huh. Yeah. He says, if we're talking about my wife, she is entirely virtuous. If you were talking about your wife, well, she's yours to deal with.
And boom, right there. That's the bisociation.
Yeah, you're holding one idea, the wife's virtue.
Yeah.
But suddenly, wham, 2 completely incompatible ways of thinking about it collide.
You expect the usual context, right? Marital honor, seriousness, social norms, that stuff.
That's the expected matrix, the code of conduct. But the Marquis just rips the topic out of that context.
And shoves it into a totally different one. The cold calculating logic of like a business deal, quid pro quo, division of labor.
Exactly. Our expectation just hits a wall, the wrong mental track. And that collision, that's what creates the spark. Or in this case, the laugh.
Okay, so that explains the first panel, the jester. Humor.
It's crucial. Because in humor, bisociation is just laid bare. It's connecting one thing to 2 totally mismatched frames of reference.
And that clash, you said it has an emotional purpose.
A very specific one. This is where Koestler's definition of laughter comes in. And it's not what most people think. It's not about joy.
Really? What is it then?
He calls it a luxury reflex. Think of it like psychological waste disposal.
Waste disposal. Okay.
Yeah. We build up a bit of emotional tension. Often it's self-assertive, maybe a little bit aggressive, or maybe just, mild apprehension, little sparks of emotion.
Yeah.
Then the joke pulls the rug out from under the situation. It shifts the whole frame of reference. Suddenly, that emotional energy you built up, it's pointless, redundant.
That doesn't fit the new context.
Exactly. It's lost its logical reason for being there. And you can't just switch off that kind of nervous energy like adrenaline. You have to get rid of it.
So you laugh it out. Explosively.
Precisely. Laughter is the body purging that excess, now useless emotional charge. Often, related to feeling a bit superior or a tiny bit of aggression. Not deep anger, just that little jolt.
Huh. So it's less about pure happiness and more about release.
A release of redundant tension. You see it all the time in simple stuff, like slapstick.
Right. Koestler talks about that tension between mind and matter or man and machine.
Perfect examples. Think about the really dignified, pompous schoolmaster, struts around all authority.
And then his chair collapses under him.
Bam. The whole matrix of authority and social dignity just gets instantly canceled out by the undeniable matrix of gravity and faulty chair legs.
The high brought low by the mundane, the clash.
It's the great leveler. The mind expects one set of rules, social status, but gets slammed with a different, baser set physics.
And the emotions getting discharged are those sharp, sudden ones. Aggression-driven.
Yeah, the self-assertive ones. It's the sympathetic nervous system going, whoops, stand down, false alarm. It's an explosive discharge.
Okay, so if bisociation and humor discharges that sort of aggressive tension, how does the same basic collision, the same clash of mental maps become constructive? How does it build knowledge for the scientist?
How do we get from ha-ha to aha?
Yeah.
Well, first we need to understand what everyday thinking is. Koestler says we operate mostly within rigid matrices.
Matrices, like mental frameworks.
Habits. Exactly. Ordered ways of thinking, habits, routines, assumptions, grooves in the brain, you could say. We absolutely need them to function for stability. But Koestler argues they also risk turning us into automatons. We get stuck in the grooves, unable to see anything outside the lines we've drawn.
So the creative act then is like a jailbreak.
That's a great way to put it. He calls it the defeat of habit by originality. It's an act of liberation.
And it's achieved by forcing together things that weren't connected before, different dimensions of experience.
Precisely. And this is where scientific genius often lies. It's not usually about inventing something totally new out of thin air, ex nihilo.
It's more about seeing a connection.
Seeing a connection between two existing matrices that everyone assumes are totally separate domains,
Yeah.
and then forcing them to interact.
Okay, examples help here. Archimedes, the crown problem.
Classic case. So Archimedes has this problem. Figure out the volume of this weirdly shaped crown. That's matrix A. A specific tricky geometry problem.
Got it.
Meanwhile, he also has matrix B, this common, everyday, sort of implicit knowledge about water displacement. You get in the bath, the water goes up. Everyone knows that.
Well, it's obvious.
But nobody had ever consciously linked those two things. Archimedes' genius, his aha moment, was realizing that the unspoken rule of bath time could be made explicit and applied directly to the crown problem.
He connected fluid displacement with geometric volume, forced them together.
Right. He bisociated bath time with royal metallurgy. And that sudden connection, that's the eureka. It's the sound of two previously unrelated mental maps crashing together.
Okay, Kepler next, changing how we saw the whole universe.
Kepler's maybe even a clearer example of forcing two fields together. For centuries, you had astronomy matrix A. What did it do?
Described where the planets were. Geometry, paths, predictions.
Purely descriptive. Where, not why. And then you had physics matrix B that dealt with forces, causes, motion, stuff happening down here on Earth.
And never the twain shall meet.
Completely separate departments. Kepler's revolutionary act was to smash that wall down. He married physics to astronomy.
Which led him to ask a totally new kind of question.
A question no pure astronomer would even think of asking. Why do planets closer to the sun move faster? He started thinking about a physical cause, a force from the sun, gravity, essentially.
He applied earthly physics to the heavens, another bisociation.
It's the engine of discovery, again and again. Gutenberg. He took the mechanism of a wine press and combined it with the idea of a coin stamp or seal. Boom, printing press.
Different matrices colliding.
Darwin. Years of biological observation, that's one matrix. Then he reads Malthus on population pressure, the struggle for existence. That's another matrix.
And connecting them gave him natural selection.
The selector he'd been missing. The synthesis, often unexpected, is where the breakthrough happens.
But hang on. If it's just connecting things that were already there, does that make creativity feel a bit less magical? Almost mundane once you see the connection.
But that's the great paradox, Koestler points out. The more original and profound a discovery is, the more blindingly obvious it seems in hindsight.
Right. You think, why didn't anyone see that before?
Exactly. Koestler is clear. Creativity isn't making something from nothing. It's selecting, reshuffling, combining, uncovering what's already latent. The real magic isn't maybe the final connection itself, but the strange mental journey you have to take to get there.
Okay, so the journey. You mentioned it's not always straightforward, logical steps.
Far from it. That journey often happens sort of subconsciously, in the dark, you might say.
The conscious mind is too stuck in its ways, too rigid.
Often, yes. It's constrained by those disciplined, established matrices we talked about. It finds it hard to make really unexpected leaps. That's where the unconscious mind seems to play a huge role in the aha moment.
Oh!
It seems to involve, like, a temporary loosening of the reins, a relaxing of the controls of that stripped, logical, step-by-step reasoning.
Allowing for different kinds of thinking.
Yeah, maybe regressing temporarily to more visual thinking, dreamlike logic, freer association. The conscious mind usually filters out.
And we actually have stories of this happening. Famous example.
Oh, absolutely. Incredible ones. Take August Kekule. He was wrestling with the structure of organic compounds, specifically how carbon atoms might form closed chains. Couldn't crack it consciously.
So what happened?
He described being on a slow bus, sort of half asleep, staring at the flickering lights or maybe a stove, and he starts daydreaming. He sees atoms gambling before my eyes, as he put it.
Like a vision.
Pretty much. And later, in another reverie, the actual structure of the benzene ring, the closed chain, came to him in this image, almost a hallucination, of a serpent biting its own tail.
Wow. Arboros. A visual metaphor unlocked the chemical structure.
Exactly. His rational, scientific mind was stuck, but this visual, almost mythical image provided the key by association. And Otto Loewy's story is just as amazing.
The guy who proved chemical nerve transmission.
That's him. He was stuck on how to design the experiment to prove it, couldn't figure out the method. Then, bang, the entire experimental design just pops into his head while he's asleep.
And a dream.
Apparently. He woke up, scribbled some notes he couldn't read later, and went back to sleep. Total frustration.
Oh, no.
But the next night, same thing. 3 in the morning, the idea comes back. Crystal clear. This time, he didn't risk it. Got up, went straight to the lab, and did the experiment immediately.
And it worked.
It worked. And he said later that if he'd thought about that experimental design logically during the day, he probably would have dismissed it as impossible or absurd.
So the unconscious mind, free from those habitual constraints, made the leap.
It performed the bisociation that conscious reason couldn't or wouldn't allow.
Which makes you think about the opposite. What happens when you can't make the leap? When you're completely stuck?
Ah, the dark side. Koestler calls it the pathology of thought, or, more vividly, snowblindness.
Snowblindness, like being unable to see what's right in front of you.
Exactly. Because you're so deeply trapped inside your established matrix, your habitual way of thinking, that you're literally blind to anything outside it, even if it's completely obvious to others.
That sounds scary, especially for smart people.
And the examples involve brilliant minds, which is what's so sobering. Think about Freud, Sigmund Freud.
Okay.
He became a huge advocate for cocaine early on, called it a magical drug. He used it himself, gave it to patients, wrote papers about its benefits for things like fatigue, depression, nervous disorders.
Right. He was looking at it through his lens, his matrix of psychology and internal medicine.
Precisely. But he was utterly blind to its most obvious and arguably most impactful medical use at the time.
Which was?
Local anesthesia, using it to numb tissues for surgery, particularly eye surgery. It was colleagues, Koestler and Koenigstein, who saw that connection. They applied the matrix of surgery and ophthalmology to the drug.
And Freud just missed it, even though he worked with these guys.
Completely missed it.
Yeah.
His mental map was so fixed on internal and psychological uses that this revolutionary surgical application was right there, and he couldn't see it. It shows snowblindness isn't about lack of intelligence. It's about the rigidity of your framework.
Wow. Any other examples?
Even Galileo, a true revolutionary thinker. But he refused to believe comets were real celestial bodies traveling through space.
Why? He saw them, didn't he?
He saw them, but they didn't fit his deeply held, almost aesthetic belief, his matrix, that all heavenly bodies must move in perfect circles. Comets moved erratically. They didn't fit the code. So, despite the evidence, he dismissed them as atmospheric phenomena. His powerful matrix blinded him.
That is painful. It really makes you wonder what obvious things we are missing right now because of our own comfortable assumptions.
Okay, so we've seen the same logical pattern, this clash of incompatible matrices driving the explosive release of humor and the constructive synthesis of science. Let's look at the third panel, the artist, the moment.
Right. How does bisociation work here? What's different?
The key difference, Koestler says, is the emotional climate, the type of emotion involved.
Okay, so the jester had that self-assertive, aggressive-ish energy that explodes in laughter. What does the artist deal with?
The artist works with what Koestler calls participatory or self-transcending emotions. Things like compassion, empathy, identification, awe, wonder, raptness.
So quieter, more connecting emotions.
Exactly. And these emotions, when faced with that bisociative clash, don't lead to an explosion like laughter. They lead to something more like catharsis, contemplation, a sense of resonance, maybe tranquility.
So the clash still happens, the incompatible matrices are still there.
Oh, yes. The logical structure, the bisociation, is identical. But the emotional result is completely different. It's not discharged, it's integrated, felt, understood on a deeper level.
Koestler uses Don Quixote as a prime example for this, right? To show how the same clash can yield different results.
Perfect example. The core bisociation in Don Quixote is that constant clash between the matrix of mundane reality, windmills, sheep, inns, and the matrix of his chivalric delusion. Giants, armies, castles.
Reality versus fantasy colliding constantly.
Right. Now, that single repeating clash can be experienced across the whole triptych, depending on your emotional attitude, the observers.
How so?
If you approach Quixote with a kind of detached malice or superiority, focusing on the absurdity, the clash is primarily comic. You laugh at him. That's the jester's panel.
Okay.
But if you approach him with empathy, with pity, feeling his humanity despite the delusion, identifying with his idealism, then the same clash becomes tragic. You feel catharsis, pathos. That's the artist's panel.
And the scientist.
Well, imagine a psychiatrist studying Quixote's case. For her, the clash between reality and delusion isn't funny or sad. It's intellectually challenging.
Right.
It's data for a diagnosis. The logical structure, the bisociation, is exactly the same in all three cases. Only the emotional response differs.
That makes sense. The logic is constant, the feeling changes, and this relates to beauty.
Yes. The experience of beauty itself, Koestler argues, often comes from an aesthetic bisociation. Think about looking closely at a snowflake.
Okay. Delicate, intricate.
Right. On one level, one matrix is just a trivial thing. Frozen water, ephemeral, commonplace.
But then you see the other matrix.
Exactly. You superimpose the context of its incredible mathematical regularity, its perfect six-fold symmetry, its unique, complex structure. The mundane is certainly fused with the abstract, the universal, the mathematically beautiful.
The synthesis of those two clashing contexts is the feeling of beauty.
That's the idea. And this is why, particularly in science and math, truth and beauty feel so deeply connected. It's not just a poetic notion.
You hear scientists talk about elegant equations.
All the time. Paul Dirac, the physicist, famously said something like, "It is more important to have beauty in one's equations than to have them fit experiment."
That sounds extreme.
It does, but his point was that the aesthetic harmony, the elegance born from a powerful dissociation, is often the deepest indicator of truth. In the highest creative acts, Koestler suggests the aha of discovery and the ah of beauty become almost indistinguishable. They're facets of the same underlying pattern revealed.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this up, we've taken a pretty deep dive into Koestler's grand theory here.
A unifying theory of jokes, genius, and art. No small feat.
And the core takeaway seems to be this idea of bisociation, that human originality, breakthrough thinking, it's fundamentally about connecting the unconnected.
Forcing different fields, different ideas, sometimes clashing emotions into the same mental space.
And crucially, it often means looking sideways, thinking differently, defeating those ingrained habits of thought we all have, breaking out of the matrix.
Exactly. And another key point is that it's not passive. The listener, the observer, you have to participate.
How do you mean?
Whether you're getting a joke, grasping a scientific concept, or feeling moved by art, you're not just receiving information, you're actively performing an act of recreation in your own mind.
You have to make the leap yourself. Follow the bisociation.
You have to cooperate with the creator's vision, bridge that gap yourself to unlock the meaning. It requires your active engagement.
Which brings us back to that, frankly, unsettling idea of snowblindness.
Yeah. The history of science, art, everything is littered with revolutionary ideas that were just
Ignored.
dismissed, forgotten, simply because they didn't fit the accepted matrix of the time.
We saw it with brilliant people like Freud and Galileo, blinded by their own frameworks.
Which forces us to ask, doesn't it? Given that what counts as obvious or relevant changes constantly with scientific and cultural fashions,
What are we blind to right now?
what current commonplace ideas, what obvious habits, what unquestioned mental maps are maybe preventing you from seeing the next big aha moment?
What crucial connection is lying dormant, just waiting for the right two matrices to collide? What truth has always been there, hidden in plain sight?